This lecture will cover best practices. Best practices for app development starts with how you should consider approaching your first project before even writing a single line of code. So firstly, let's talk about the right mindset. Most beginners don't have the correct mindset, nor are they prepared for what is to be their future career. Android and Apple both have guidelines for developing your app on their operating systems. I've provided links to the Android and Apple guidelines in this lecture's description. Apple's iOS platform is the most desirable for first-time developers. However, Apple has more stringent guidelines, especially on hybrid applications. This is because Apple wants apps that look and feel native and work just as any other app would. They don't want ugly, sluggish, and pointless apps inundating their App Store. For Android apps, the Google Play Store isn't as strict. However, they have toughened up on their review guidelines, and quite rightly so. Apple and Android are in direct competition with each other, and they want to provide their users with the best experience possible. This can only be achieved by not trying to appease the developers, but rather their user base. By having stringent regulations, they give the user the best possible experience. Some developers call these stringent guidelines burdensome, but they're not realizing that if your app performs, is stylish, and works the way the user expects, then you appease not only the App Store, but also the users of your app. This is why, as app developers, we need to have the right frame of mind. Don't complain if your app gets rejected. Rethink your app and make it more desirable. As an app developer, the best frame of mind to be in is simply, I want to make the App Store review team want my app on their store and to go above and beyond the bare minimum set by the guidelines. For example, one of my students from my first PhoneGap course emailed me saying he basically wanted to create a hybrid app that is in essence loading an iframe from his website. I told this student politely that they're wasting their time. All app stores frown and condemn the use of iframes for security reasons, and it's far from the native app experience. Of course, fetching data from an online source is acceptable, as most apps do this. But this data must be displayed through a HTML page loaded from within the app itself. Also, you must notify the user if they need a network connection to view a certain part of your app. In short, your app has to be self-contained with no dependencies UI or UX-wise from outside the app itself. This is just one aspect of the guidelines for Android and Apple apps. This now brings me to my second point, which all great app developers do. They focus on the app icon, UI for user interface, and UX for user experience. If you're a lucky developer and designer like me, then you have the pleasure of creating an app from start to finish. However, this is quite a task for a single individual. If this were me, I would go hunting for some inspiration. Firstly, for app icons, and secondly, for some user interface designs. When the user first installs your app, they can see the icon on their home screen. This is your chance to scream quality. Just look at the unique way that app designers use perspective to make a small square space into something magnificent. The term UI, or user interface, is the actual design of the interface, such as the color scheme, navigation areas, pop-ups, table content, and more, which some even include little snippets of UX. The term UX, or user experience, is basically looking at how the user will interact with the interface. For example, let's say I'm building a to-do app. If I swipe left on a table cell that contains a to-do task, it will show me more options associated with the content in that cell. I actually like thinking of UX as user expects. In essence, you're trying to create an interface that ties into what the user expects your interface to do. This now leads me to my third point, associated with the first point, mindset. In reality, it seems daunting, which means you're looking at app development with perspective. I recommend you develop a complex, beautifully designed app for yourself before gaining any clients. It's never a good idea to have clients asking for high-end apps until you have one or two of your own published on the App Store. If you think that apps don't take a long time to develop, then this mindset also needs quashing. Yes, you're programming in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, but there are many aspects to an app which don't cross the mind of a beginner, such as storage, security, data privacy, fetching data, building and designing a touch-enabled UI with UX in mind, and dealing with the App Store. You could spend at least a month designing the app icon and interface, excluding UX notes for simple to moderate apps. You should never underestimate the time it takes and charge hundreds of pounds when in reality it costs thousands. Some of the best apps in the App Store have been developed over months and every detail gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Developing the app, in reality, is half the battle. The rest relies on your creative input. Making something beautiful and that works the way the user expects is not uniform like programming. It's far more intensive, but if you get the right balance, 50% development and 50% design, the sky's the limit.